How's going, guys? I feel like I haven't recorded anything or streamed, well, I haven't done either of those for a long time, so I'm kind of nervous just speaking into my mic right now. But since Ascalon banner has been announced, here we go again. Time to record another Should You Pull video. But before we actually go into that this time, for those of you who know, probably already know, but for those of you who don't, this side story event is actually really important. So if you had like any interest in Arknights story before, and like some of like the basic concepts and like the basic story, right, I would highly recommend you to give this story a read. It's actually a critical part and a great story. Highly recommended. So that being said, let's talk about should you pull this banner or not. And this time I'm actually going to go against what most people would say, because personally I feel like most people are going to recommend like, or just not going to pull, but actually would highly recommend you to get her. And let's talk about why. We will be getting a joint banner in the future with Ascalon and Degenbra here, but like if you don't want to wait and gamble for the 25% chance later on, I would still highly recommend you to get her right now. So let's take a look at Ascalon. So she is a ambusher, right? So for those of you who has a lot of fun with Ethan, Manticore, and Mizuki, you would know this class very well. For those of you who don't, just recall those classes, you would know who this is for. So the thing about Ascalon is that she is both a crowd control operator as well as a damage dealer. And usually, like, just looking at the stats alone, it might not feel like so. Like, especially with her, how incredibly, like, her crowd control capability is. It's hard to see how she actually shines in the damage side, but trust me, her damage is actually also really good. But first of all, let's take a look at her talents. So that's ignoring the modules. Oh, by the way, module level 1 is all you need with Ascalon. We'll talk about why a bit later. So with talent 1, whenever Ascalon attacks an enemy, she will apply a debuff that increases the movement speed by 18%, and they will take 10% of Ascalon's current attack as arch damage per second, and that will last 25 seconds. And you can stack this for three times. So you can have minus 54% movement speed if you have 3 stacks, and then 30% of her attack as arch damage per second. Now, because of how her base attack is, which is basically just 954 if you don't have higher potentials, this is roughly looking at 300 arch damage per second, which, to be honest, isn't a lot if you just consider this, but 300, this talent alone is basically like Manticore's skill. What's the passive skill for Manticore? Is it skill 1 or skill 2? You guys get that? And then Ethan's skill 1 combined is this effect. Like this talent alone. So this talent covers 2 skills. That's how good she is, in my opinion. Like, it already tells like how different she is compared to your previous operators of the same class. Now, her second talent is that she will gain 8 attack speed, and you will get another 2, so plus 10 attack speed if she's pot 10. And when there is a high ground tile to her top, down, left, or right, she will gain an additional 6 attack speed. Now, what this does is that this allows her to stack more layers of the debuff quickly, like more quicker, because if you don't have this buff, if you don't have this increased attack speed, her initial attack interval is like 3.5 seconds. But with this, you can bring it down to like 3 seconds each attack, which is actually quite incredible considering like you can just deal more damage quickly and you can have better control. And this is where actually the first module comes in, because with her first module at level 1 already, all enemies within her attack area will have minus 20% movement speed. This is a multiplier between this and her first talent, so it's not like 54% plus 20%, but it's more like minus 54%, and then upon that you do a multiply by 0.8, so minus 80%, minus 20% that way. So it's a multiplicative multiplier, not a addition kind of a situation. So with this talent alone, you can actually limit more enemies within her attack area, and then plus the increased attack speed, you're guaranteed basically to stack 3 layers of debuff when enemies are walking within her attack area. So that is actually a really good combo with her talent and module, in my opinion. Now let's take a look at her skills. So her first skill is actually really simple. It's a maximum minimum of 7 SP. So if you M3, it's 7 SP. And her next attack will deal up to 210% of her attack and hit twice. And you can charge this skill for 3 times. The downside of this skill is that it doesn't actually increase her her actual attack. It's increased the damage of the attack, right? So this doesn't increase her poison damage, so her damage over time. So that's actually the biggest downside of this skill in my opinion, because if you just want to deal like high amount of physical damage, well, you can just use Mizuki's skill 1 anyway. So this has the benefit of having the ability to apply 2 layers of the slow really quickly, but it eventually gets outshined by skill 2 for how much more versatile skill 2 is, because skill 2 is just way better. Trust me on that. So unless you're like, oh, I really want to do AFK strategy, then there's no really a reason for you to use skill 1. And to be honest, even without using any of her skills, she's pretty good at AFK. So if you must, just like have it at skill level 7, and you can still apply the slow anyway. There's not really a need for you to M3 this, even if you want to go for AFK strat, which is what I tend to do anyway. Now, skill 2 is really the best skill that she has. So within this 35-second duration, by the way, this SP requirement is only 20. So this skill only takes 20 seconds to charge and a 35-second duration. So it's really quick for this skill to cool down. And within the skill duration, she will have plus up to 130% attack, and all enemies within the attack area will have minus 60% movement speed. This is also a multiplier. So if you combine this minus 60%, the talent, and then 3 layers of her debuff, she can actually decrease the enemy's movement speed by about 85%. What that means is, you know how the usual slow, like Orchid, operators like Orchid, when they attack, they apply a slow effect, right? That is decrease enemies' movement speed by 80%. This is 85 at max. And this is a true AoE as well. This is just a great crowd control ability. And because of the plus 130% attack, this actually more than doubles the damage per second for her poison. That gives it more like over 700 arts damage per second, which is just way better, considering like the total combined damage is way higher than either her skill 1 or skill 3 actually. And increased 130% attack also means that because her normal attack is still physical, and higher physical damage also means higher damage per hit, and it passes through way more enemy defense compared to, well, skill 3. So skill 2 is just really the best skill that I would consider, and in actual practice, I actually love this skill. It feels so good to use, and I would highly recommend everyone to M3 this skill and this skill alone. You don't really need skill 1 or skill 3 M3, to be honest. That's how good this skill is. Also, I'm not done yet, because there's this extra line of text here. When that enemy that was applied a debuff was taken down, it will do a splash effect of like spreading the debuff of talent 1 to surrounding enemies. So this can actually allow enemies that are outside of her attack area to also be applied debuff from her talent 1. So that is just incredible. And because Talon 1 lasts 25 seconds, like you just plot her down and just let enemies walk all the way across the map, and then they'll just die eventually because of how long this Talon lasts. And this type of skill is also really good for enemies that require like a certain amount of damage, like no, a certain amount of attack to be taken. So you remember the was it the Ling event where the enemies require like 3 hits to kill or something, and then we would use operators like Ethan or Thorns to do the damage over time. She has AoE damage over time, but this is just great for that kind of a situation. So in general, really good skill to use. Now, at last, it is skill 3. So this is actually a skill that I thought was going to be pretty good, but after giving it a few tries, I just realized that it's not that good of a skill. Like, too much gambling required as well. And I did the math, and it was just not worth it. So the effect of this skill is that she will have increased attack area, so similar to Mizuki skill 3. She will have plus up to 50% attack, and because of that, she actually has lower damage per second and lower total damage compared to skill 2. Oh wait, similar total damage over a 45-second duration, but lower damage per second and lower damage per hit compared to skill 2. Her attack interval is greatly reduced, so that is really good, by minus 1.5 seconds. So if you think about it, it's more like getting her attack duration to roughly, attack interval to roughly 2 seconds compared to not having this. That's pretty good. And then all enemies within her attack area have minus up to 50% physical and arch damage accuracy. So I think I mentioned this before in another Shijuku video, where the accuracy and the evasion is 2 different type of calculation. They're calculated separately. So what this does is minus 50% of their chance to hit, right? It ended up being not that good of an effect in my opinion, and I just never think that I would ever use it, to be honest, because it's really a gamble. Obviously, if you're willing to just keep trying over and over again, you can basically see it as like guaranteed survival, but not really the kind of skill that I would recommend to people to use, to be honest, unless you're looking for things like CC, or else there's really no situation where you would find that minus 50% accuracy that important. Also, within the skill duration, she is more likely to be attacked by enemies. How this works is usually ambushes would have -1 level of taunt to enemies, right? So enemies are already less likely to attack them, but this talent actually increases the taunt level by 2, so it brings it to the same level as Lenar, as an example. So yes, you can choose to use skill 3 to like bait some damage away from Lenar if you really want to, from like range enemies, but I think Lenar already does the job good enough. And there's another benefit of, if she gets attacked by the enemy and the enemy misses or she dodges the attack, she will recover 8% of her max HP. But like, what are you trying to do with that? Are you trying to put her away from all your medics and then just let her sit there alone and activate skill 3 alone and try to keep her alive? Like, what is the use case of that, to be honest? Like, there's really not much use case, and it doesn't really add to the skill anyway, because if you really want her to sit away and just like take damage of enemies while they're running, like in the let's say at the spawn point, you can just have operators like, I don't know, Aya Altar that has long range of healing, or you can just use Silence Drone to heal. You don't really need this self HP heal from skill 3 anyway. So I don't really see the point of this skill, and I just don't recommend anyone to M3 it unless you're like really rich and you just gotta M9 everyone. Then go ahead. And oh, by the way, let's talk about the module a little bit, because this is actually a really important thing. So the level 1 effect of her module is actually the talent part, where she would apply minus 20% movement speed to all enemies. But if you bring it to level 2 and onwards, she'll get a bit more attack as base stats, but also enemies will take 1% extra damage from her poison damage. So it used to be 10% of her attack as arch damage per second. It goes to 11%. Yay. That's all you get from level module 3. So just don't bother with it. Just don't bother with it. All right, I guess that's most of it. Let's talk about how I feel, how I would use her personally. So in your usual like day-to-day event stages, I think she's actually a really great operator. Because of how effective her skill 2 is. If you activate her skill 2, right, most enemies won't be able to walk past her to even reach your defenders. So the really good thing about her is that I can just put her down and I can make sure that basically no enemies will ever get past. Now you can then combine her with your other DPS operators, like if you want to do Minar or whatever, you can combine them together, or you can have her deal the damage on her own, because she actually has quite significant amount of total damage, especially against most like mobs. She'll clear most of them out. Then you can just leak through the elites and the bosses and deal with them later. So she's really good with that. So highly recommend her for like your normal event stages. And because of how short her cooldown is, she's just like a no-brainer. If you're like, oh, a ton of enemies coming, click skill and you're done. And that's the wave done. And you don't have to calculate like, oh, what if the next wave of enemy comes too early? Because of the short cooldown, you don't have to worry about that. So that's really good for her. I don't know too much about her in CC. I haven't really seen a use case that's like, oh, max risk CC and like you really need Ascalon. I haven't seen any situations with that. But personally, I feel like if you're willing to gamble, skill 3 might have a chance to shine for the dodge, like baiting damage. So I think you guys have already saw the current CC where Lyn was taking all the damage, right? And then because of how tanky she is, she just takes no damage. So I can see her skill 3 used in a similar fashion to that, but it will also have to be the kind of enemy that can break Lyn's shield and does not easily kill Ascalon. So the balance is there, so that's up to you. Personally, yeah, that's a bit of a niche situation in my opinion. Now, when it comes to IS, she actually shines more in IS 3, if I recall correctly, and then IS 5 later on, but you can still use her in IS 4. She's actually still a really great operator in my opinion. It's just that we already have like 3 specialists that we want to get to do the 2 cricket deploys, and then we also have Ella. So how important do you think this minus movement, like decrease in movement speed is? That is up to you. I still really like her, but probably wait for, if you really want to use her, it's mostly like IS3 and IS5. IS4, grab your other specialists first. And then we have SSS. With that is she's actually pretty good from things I've heard, because you can actually stack like a lot of buff on her and give her a ton of attack and ton of attack speed, right? And with that, she can actually deal a significant amount of damage and slow as well. You can basically use her as a permanent stall, like CC, if you really wanted to, given attack speed, or you can just, you know, give her defender, increase her block count, and just skill, and then she will just block enemies. That does the job, because she Ambusher already has 50% dodge anyway, and then if you use skill 3, you can also have minus 50% accuracy. So that kind of works. When it comes to, wait, what haven't I mentioned? Oh, RA. I haven't really used her in RA, so I don't really know how good she does. But in my opinion, if you have the chance to like crowd stall enemies, I think that is a great ability to have. And the good thing about her is that she can actually so let's say if there are enemies that you can't block, right? She's already proven to deal a lot of damage without needing to block enemies. So even if the enemies are unblockable, she doesn't really care. So I think that's one place where she can shine. And yeah, defending your base, she has the attack area and the good damage over time. So yep, I can see her shine in RA as well. I think that's about it for her use case. One last thing that I would like to mention before ending this video is I understand that a lot of us are looking for the upcoming limited banner because we all know it's about time, and we all know that it's going to be a really important banner to pull. So even though I'm highly recommending you to pull Ascalon, but you can always save up like for the upcoming joint banner where you have Ascalon and Dejin that will come after the limited banner. So if you really don't have that much pull right now, you can skip her. Or if you're like me and you want to pull her now, what you can do is just calculate how many pulls you're going to get before the limited banner, which is coming in roughly a month. Calculate how much you're going to get, and then, you know, just see how far you can pull in this banner and do that. That's also fine. As for me, I'm just going to buy the packs and I'm just going to pull with the packs because, you know, I tend to get I want to get all the operators ASAP. So that's just me. But even though I'm recommending you guys to pull, just don't go too far in this banner is what I want to say. That is all I have to say for this video, I feel like. And thank you guys for watching. It feels good to be back. And hopefully we can, you know, have a great time reading this story, because I can't wait to watch you guys read this story. It's going to be a great story. Trust me, guys. So I'll see you guys in the pulling video, which is coming in 2 days. I'll see you guys then. Bye.